Is it over? I just want to know if it's over. I think it's about over. I'm kind of waiting for the dust to settle. I think the dust has settled and I could talk about it right now. Or, the dominant society, their feelings probably might still be hurt. But I think the outcry is a bit over. I hope. So, yeah. This is what I'm going to be talking about now, right? I knew about this for a while, right? But I didn't know what she said exactly. So I heard this a little while, what she said exactly, and it just infuriated me. No. Not because she was lying, because she was telling the damn truth. She was telling the truth. And she wasn't even being insensitive about it. That's the thing. She wasn't even being insensitive about it. But I know in this day and age in America, you cannot disparage these two groups. You cannot say anything in the slightest about LGBTQ plus people. You can't say anything about them, even if it's innocent or side. You can't say anything sideways, right? You can't do that. That's a no-no. And you definitely can't say anything about Jewish people in any way, historically, religiously, politically, socially. You can't say anything about them in the slightest. But black people, who cares? I don't give a fuck about black people. Who cares? You know what I'm saying? You could say nigga all day and they'd be like, well, I did say the N-word, but I was listening to Drake. And I'm a Drake fan and I dated a black guy in college, so I'm not racist. There's always some nuance to it and things like that. What she said was not wrong, and that's what's egging me. Is like she had it's like she was, I believe, being very careful, right? Because she says, hey, look, you know what? I'm just going to play it for those of you who don't know it, what she said or whatever. And I'm just going to comment on it a little bit. And I know I have to be very careful because I'm critiquing people who don't want to be critiqued and stuff like that. So before I move forward, right, the Holocaust was an atrocious thing to happen to the Jewish people, period. There's no excuse. There's no nuance to that. There's no, well, hey, but, no, there's no but. It was wrong. It should never happen at all whatsoever under any circumstances. That shouldn't have happened, right? That's a travesty against humanity. That is a form of genocide, right? So, with that being said, I'm gonna show you the video of what she said, and I'm gonna critique it, obviously, because I'm the black critique, and I'm gonna show you why she is right. Not people just saying, yeah, I see what she was saying, but she's wrong because Jewish people are a different race. All these things I'm gonna lay on the table and show you why that their take on it is wrong and why they're pushing this narrative.
Story. Good morning, Ariel.
Good morning to you, George. Though Goldberg has apologized, her comments sparked a firestorm, some seeing this as a troubling sign of fading understanding about the horrors of the Holocaust. This morning, ABC News suspending Whoopi Goldberg for 2 weeks in response to her inflammatory remarks about the Holocaust. ABC News President Kim Godwin saying in a statement, effective immediately, I am suspending Whoopi Goldberg for 2 weeks for her wrong and hurtful comments. While Whoopi has apologized, I've asked her to take time to reflect and learn about the impact of her comments. The entire ABC News organization stands in solidarity with our Jewish colleagues, friends,
Not into conspiracies or anything like that, but Kim Godwin? Oh, okay.
Family and communities.
If you're going to do this, then let's be truthful about it, because the Holocaust isn't about race.
On Monday's show, the host of ABC's The View inaccurately claimed the Holocaust was not related to race.
It's not about race. It's not about race.
What is it about?
Because it's about man's inhumanity to man. That's
AKA tribalism. What happened there was tribalistic. Like how you have like in like say like back in England and in Ireland, the Irish don't like the English. The Scottish may not like the Irish. You know what I'm saying? You have Celts versus Picts, Ingles. You know, it's infighting. It's infighting, right? For whatever reason that it is. And they have done horrible things to each other. Just the Germanic tribes themselves, right? Like you got the Lombards, right? You have the Vandals, the Visigoths. You have all these people that did very horrible things to each other. They didn't do it to each other because they were a different race. They were just different Germanic tribe.
what it's about.
Whoopi Goldberg.
Goldberg appearing to double down on the Colbert Show that night.
The American experience tends to be based on skin.
Yes. And so that is what race means to me. Mm-hmm. When you talk about being a racist, I was saying you can't call this racism. This was evil. Mm-hmm. This wasn't based on the skin. You couldn't tell who was Jewish. Mm-hmm. They had to delve deeply to figure it out.
Then
Exactly. They have to really find out who was. Now, going back to race. Now, white people invented the construct of race. Race is a social construct. Race is a construct that was created by white people to understand themselves in the world and why they are the way they are and different from other people. So instead of saying, hey, look, the vast majority of the world are black and brown people, and here we are white, they just basically said, well, okay, that must mean we're better than the majority of the world. But we're not going to get into genetics or anything like that. Basically, that's what racism is, right? Racism has always been the same. It has not changed, right? So when she went further to say, hey, look, it's based upon the skin. So the concept of racism is what they're applying. She's right. They're applying, say that they're different. And she said you couldn't really find out who was a Jew or not. What she's saying is exactly right, because you had to, there was no indication unless they had walk around with a Star David or a Torah or something to indicate that they're Jewish. They could blend in any European society.
tweeting an apology saying in part, the Jewish people around the world have always had my support and that will never waver. I'm sorry for the hurt I have caused. And the next day, opening The View with this.
I said that the Holocaust wasn't about race, and it was instead about man's inhumanity to man. But it is indeed about race, because Hitler and the Nazis considered Jews to be an inferior race. Now, words matter.
So because Hitler said that, made up a false classification of about Jewish people being race solely based upon their religion, that means they're a different race? That makes no sense. So if I were to say, okay, the people from Cameroon, the indigenous people of Cameroon, right, are a different race than the people in, let's say, Ghana. Two completely different races. Just because I said so. Or let's say an authority figure says so, because I'm really nobody, right? Let's say an authority figure like a president or a dictator like how Hitler was, or a king, and says, well, that's the dynamic now. So we're just going to go with that, right? That's a false premise. He tried to reinvent what race is in order to carry out in order for Hitler to carry out his atrocities. Because he can't basically say, well, okay, yeah, you're white like me, so, I'm going to do it because you're white like me. No. Remember, for him to say, well, these people are the other, he had to dehumanize them, right? So, look, they're not Christian like me, good, upstanding Christian people. And you're going to see what Hitler ideology of what race is, which is once again false, right? Because even Hitler himself even didn't live up to what of his own idea of what the master race is, what the master race looks like. But we'll continue and do that later.
And mine are no exception. I regret my comments, as I said, and I stand corrected. I also stand with the Jewish people, as they know and y'all know, because I've always done that.
By the end of the Holocaust, just 77 years ago, 6 million Jews had been murdered.
That might not fit exactly or feel different than the way we think about race in 21st century America, where primarily it's about people of color. But throughout
the Holocaust happened in the 1940s. Like the article said, 70 years ago. The concept and the ideology of what race is and how it's being used has not changed. All this is people that call themselves Jewish, Israelite, want to be the people of the book. And we don't know the people of the book. They want to be God's special people. They want to be God's chosen people. And we all know that God's chosen people, if you go back into the Bible and who these people are, they are not Europeans. So by you saying they are white and it's not about race, right? This false analogy, this false dichotomy of European Jews actually being a different race, you're like insulting them, and that's considered anti-Semitic, which is another word that I hate because they're not Semitic people. Just because you have a Semitic religion doesn't make you Semitic. The actor Richard Gere, he's a Buddhist. So if I say, hey, I don't like Richard Gere and I hate Richard Gere, hates his guts, da 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 da, no one's gonna say I'm being Asian hate. It's Asian hate. You have a thing. You hate Asian. You hate Asians. I'm like, what? No, just because I'm a Buddhist doesn't make me Asian. Just like how them being Jewish converts don't make them non-white.
the Jewish people's history, they have been marginalized, they have been persecuted, they have been slaughtered, in large part because many people felt they were not just a different religion, but indeed a different race.
Who believes that? Now, my friend is a little bit more versed on history, on Jewish history and people of Eastern Europe. So, of course, you have people, you have Eastern Europe people like places like Poland and certain parts of Russia, and that area and that region there are Jewish. And some of them, yes, were marginalized. They kept to themselves because of their religion. Before they converted, and I'll show you when the mass conversion was happening, they had no denomination. They had no denomination whatsoever, right? So it wasn't like, oh, these European people were always Jewish. No, this is a recent convert, right? This is a recent convert.
The head of the Anti-Defamation League warning anti-Semitism is still a real and present danger.
We need people on good faith on the left and the right to call this out forcefully, fully, without hesitation.
And studies show an alarming...
Yeah, unless you're black. Anyway, so this is what they're trying to protect. They try and protect this ideology that Jews are a different race, when genetically speaking, and I'm going to say, yes, culturally speaking, you are European. There are Europeans that are Muslim. A great deal of Europeans that are Muslim. There's a great deal of Europeans that are Christian. There's a great deal of Europeans that have different denominations. Just because, I mean, this kind of sounds like, well, I'm white and I said so, so hey, just believe me, right? That doesn't mean your religion is a part of your culture and your belief system. Your religion doesn't denote race, right? If I say, hey, I'm Muslim, right, doesn't mean that I'm an Arab. A Muslim could be Arab, a Muslim could be black, a Muslim could be Asian, a Muslim could be white. So there's no genetic DNA marker that says, okay, whoever, Mr. Johnson, oh my gosh, Mr. Johnson, you're Muslim. Your name should be Hamed now. You're Muslim now. It's like that makes no sense. But what's the rule? The man that owns the gold makes the rules. That's the golden rule, right? So these are people just making the rules because they have, once again, this is not trying to be anti-Semitic or have an anti-Semitic, because this may sound like an anti-Semitic trope, but once people have power and things like that and pride, they can control the narrative of who they are and what they are. Are a protected class, right? That's respected by the dominant society, will have to respect their image, their culture, who they are, right? If that doesn't speak of white privilege, I don't know what is, right? They're supposed to be a different race, right? But they look like white people phenotypically, right? They look like white people phenotypically. They can blend in anywhere. But in this day and age, they don't necessarily have to pretty much blend in because, they have some form of power, right? They have some form of power that has to be recognized. They have their faces in high places where they could do what they want to do and don't be chastised. If they feel any criticism or any so-called anti-Semitic hostilities towards them, justice is swift, right? Black people, not so much. Hispanic people, not so much, right? Even when we have videos and they're pretty much got their hands filled with blood, it's always like, let's do an investigation and really see what happened. Why this white person killed this black guy. Why this white person called this black guy the N-word. Why is all these, let's just investigate and see. It's never on its face, that's horrible, right? So with them, justice is always swift. So I'm really trying to understand. I would like to ask a Jewish person, which I have in the past, why if you consider yourself white, right, and knowing the people of the Bible are not white, how did you get white? And I asked this years back when I was studying religion, and he was like, oh, yeah, we were in so-called Palestine or whatever, the Levant region and area and stuff like that. And then we moved from there, and us moving there, due to war and things like that and religious persecution. And, we moved into Europe and our skins got lighter. I'm laughing inside, but at least he gave an explanation. That's how he felt. We all know that's not right. This is bullshit. But at least he gave an explanation. This is what people of that faith deluded themselves, or he probably think, I don't know, to think that, yes, we are the original people of that area. We are the original Jews and all these other things. But when you take their DNA test, saying they're European, they're Ashkenazi Jews, right? So what I'm going to do right now is basically show and prove that what Whoopi Goldberg saying was absolutely right on its face. It's not that hard. Even Jewish people themselves know that, hey, look, besides them obviously being human, they also know that, hey, look, you cannot tell the difference between a German, right, just regular German, and a German Jew, because we all look the same, right? So I'm going to show and prove that with Jewish sources. Here is my source, right? Holocaust Encyclopedia. I'm just getting information from the Holocaust Encyclopedia that agrees with me, right? This is not my personal belief or anything like that. I agree with the Jewish people of what Nazi racism is. This is Nazi racism. This is not the classical definition of racism like Whoopi Goldberg said based upon skin. Hitler tried to create a different class of racism, which is basically was, like I said, is just basically tribalism. But instead of tribalism, he tried to denote them as a different race, right? So let's go here. Nazi racism. So give us a definition of it. Now, it says the Nazis used public displays to spread their ideas of race. The chart shown here is titled The Biology of Growth, as is labeled Stages of Growth for members of the Nordic race. That's way further up. That's Northern European, right? So, and I don't know why he was talking about the Nords, and the Nords is way further up. Like if you go to like Norway and Sweden and Greenland, those are like those people is what he's talking about. Germany is not far up there, but it's not that far up. Anyway, so go on further. For years before Adolf Hitler became the Chancellor of Germany, he was obsessed with ideas about race in his speeches and writings. Hitler spread his beliefs in racial purity. His beliefs. It's a belief, not a fact. It's a belief, right? Spread his belief in racial purity and the superiority of the Germanic race, right? What he called an Aryan master race. Now, when he says Germanic race, I can see where they could add the Aryan part, because all white people come from or derive from Germanic tribes, right? Germanic tribe, unless you call yourself a Roman back in those days when the Roman Empire was at its height. You had Romans, and then other Europeans were just Germanic tribes, right? But he's specifically saying an Aryan master race, right? Please look up that word Aryan. It's very interesting. I'll drop a gem. Arius and Aryan. Look up Arius and Aryan. See the relation between those two words, right? He pronounced that his race must remain pure in order to one day take over the world. For Hitler, the idea Aryan was blonde, blue-eyed, and tall. Now, I'm not going to put a picture of Hitler. Fuck him. But we all know what Hitler looks like. He only fit like, what, 2 of these criterias? Right? Hitler had blue eyes, yes. But Hitler was not blonde. And I don't think he was tall. I think he was probably about average height for a man. I don't think he was tall at all. I doubt that he was tall. Right? So the man with this ideology doesn't even fit his own criteria, but he's the one that's going to lead the charge on this thing. It's totally hypocritical. It's like this absolutely makes no sense. This is just his ideology is false from the jump. Like when Hitler and the Nazis came to power, these beliefs became the government ideology and were spread in public displays, posters, radio, and movies, classrooms, newspapers. The Nazis began to pull their ideology into practice with the support of German scientists who believed that the human race could be improved by limiting the reproduction of people considered inferior. So this is basically genetics is what's going on by, if you basically Charles Darwin, right, started this whole ideology, and his cousin Charles Galton, he was actually doing the whole eugenics thing and just took it further, right? So that's what they talk about right here, right? So already we know that Hitler's a nut. He had a standard for what white people are, and he doesn't fit that standard. So already he should be eliminated from that criteria. But he's leading it, right? His ideology is a belief, according to this article, and this article is right. Is not facts, right? So once again, this just spews of tribalism, and another group wants to blame another group for their problems and their issues. Sounds like FBA and ADOS to me. So let's go. So right here, we're basically talking about, like I said, it's going to be eugenics, right? So let's read to see for this. Establishing racial descent by measuring an ear at the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute of Anthropology, Germany. Date uncertain. So it sounds like they're doing cranial sizes. So going back to Charles Darwin, basically saying that the standard, so that we're all primates, right? All of us are primates. Humans are primates, right? So chimpanzees, bonobos, whatever. We're all primates, right? But Charles Darwin was trying to basically say is that he's trying to do the hierarchy and the evolution of mankind, right? So he says, these are outdated terms, obviously. So you say you have the monkey and the black man, which is called the Negroid. The Negroid skull is closer to the monkey. So black people are monkeys. Heard that one before, right? Yay, Joe Rogan, right? Black people are monkeys, right? Then you got the Mongoloid skull. The Mongoloid skull is basically Asians, right? And then you got the Caucasoid skull, which will be the white man, which is the height of human evolution. The height of human evolution, right? Not mutation, evolution, right? We know it's a mutation now, right? The height of evolution, right? And that's where that comes from. So their scale model and their yardstick, okay, your jawline has to be this big or this small. Your cranium has to be this shape in order to see, in order to be white. So anything that doesn't fit that criteria, they're going to say, there's some Negroid, Mongoloid admixing here and all that other stuff, right? And those are people they probably prevent from having kids and stuff like that, right? So, we covered that. Germanic superiority, race, what he called Aryan, the master race. He pronounced his race must remain pure in order for one day to take over the world. For Hitler, this idea, Aryan was blonde, blue-eyed, hair tall. Yeah, okay, I think I read that. I am totally sorry if I did. There's some more here you could read right here, but them they also were gypsies and things like that, saying that there was like Africans or Africans in Germany, and they also obviously got exterminated too, right? So obviously they're definitely a different race, right? They're definitely a different race, right? So you have that there. So what I'm gonna do, we're gonna go, okay, again with more Nazi racism, right? This is basically, the article says the same thing. My fault. I'll just realize that. Basically giving you the whole thing of pretty much how they viewed people and stuff like that. Nazis outline political agenda. The first volume of Mein Kampf appears, right? Mein Kampf, right? Just check out this Holocaust Encyclopedia, right? Now, right here, this gentleman right here is basically going to prove my point and Whoopi Goldberg's point about the Nazis. The Nazis, well, not the Nazis, the German Jewish people and the regular Germans that were not Jewish were the same people, right? This is coming from a Jewish man who lived that experience. Let's hear what he has to say.
I was sitting by the table, and there was a young girl, a German girl. And I was talking fluently German. I spoke to her, and she spoke to me, and I saw she likes me. She talks to me, and then she started talking about Jews. That because of the Jews, the war broke out. Because of the Jews, this. I asked her a plain question: did you ever saw a Jew? She said, no, I never saw. I said, how you know? What did I said, oh, Hitler said that they are killers, they are this, and they have horns, she said. They have horns, Jews have horns. I said, listen, darling, I am a Jew, and I have no horns. And she almost died. I couldn't believe it, what kind of face she made then. And she ran out from the house, and she was so excited, and so this. Then she came back and said, you are lying to me. That's impossible, she said. You couldn't be it. I was a good-looking young fellow in a uniform, and she couldn't believe it. And that was the image of the Jew. It wasn't only they didn't know who a Jew is, but the image of a Jew was for them something terrific. It was with horns, or some devil, or something. A Jew is not a normal person.
There you go. From this man's mouth, who is Jewish, right? Who had an interaction with another German person who had their ideology of Jew. So you see, Hitler had to demonize them politically, economically, and physically by saying they had horns, saying that they were some type of devil, right? He did not demonize them based upon how they look phenotypically, because phenotypically they were white, right? So of course Hitler says, hey, look, blonde hair, blue eyes, tall. So you're not going to say there's no Jews that have blonde hair or blue eyes and they're all short? That doesn't make any sense. You know what I'm saying? Even people who are considered very short, certain people are considered very short, right? Every once in a while they have some tall people every now and again. Look at Yao Ming. You know, so you got basketball players, right? Yao Ming, some Asians are a certain height and they're not on average that tall like Yao Ming, right? But you can't say there's no tall Asians. You know, it's totally disingenuous. So again, Whoopi Goldberg was right, and this man right here just confirmed her being right. And I'm going to take it a little bit further to even prove to you that Hitler knew these people were just the same as him, but he had to make certain indications and do certain things to make sure that they won't get away and blend in with the so-called regular German population. Here we are is what Hitler did in order to know who was Jewish and who was a so-called regular Jew. Even children wore they did it by putting the Star of David on them, right? Shaped like a Star of David on them. Even children, they were doing this. You see here, doing it to whole families. Why are they doing this? Because they could blend in with other German people, because they are white like other German people. If they were a different race, like the classification of what race is, it will be unnecessary to do that. I'm pretty sure they didn't do that to the black ones, because you can clearly see that they're not blonde hair, blue eyes, and all these other things, right? They even did it to children, right? Everyone had to wear this if you were a Jew. If you didn't wear it, you know, probably a Nazi is going to come to you and say, where are your papers? Or who are you? Are you Jew? And all these other things and stuff like that. And you will have to explain it to him or whatever, you know. Like, they all wore this. These are indications of them doing. So it says right here, this is a Snopes article, the king of Denmark wore a yellow star, right? The king of Denmark, right? The king of Denmark. Did that ring a bell yet? The king, he's the king of Denmark. So that had nothing to do with his race. It had nothing to do with his classification, right? It has to do with his religion. Because it obviously didn't have to do anything with race. And they had to put a yellow star of David on him. All right? You got these couples here. You got children, men, women, children, young, old, all wearing the Star of David. This is horrible. What they were doing to their own people. This is their own people. And they have to make these classifications to dehumanize them, to make themselves feel better like they doing to somebody else, which is still inexcusable. But this is the things they had to do, some sort of sick, twisted cognitive dissonance they had to create in order for them to do these things to their own people. Right? So this is just sad that you have to live under those conditions, that you have to be marked. But it gets worse. They were even tattooing them. So let's say for some reason, I mean, if you guys look at Schindler's List, that's a good movie to look at too. If you look at Schindler's List, right? There are also some people, like, you know, they may not wear the Star of David or something like that, or they probably slipped under the radar and they blend in with other German people, right? That's possible. And that did happen. Why? Because they're not a different race. They're the same race. So what they would do, they unfortunately graduated from wearing the Star of David to actually tattooing your arm. So unfortunately, this is probably happening to people who were, you know, also going to concentration camps or on their way to concentration camps, or instead of going to concentration camps to the gas chambers to die, they probably did like labor or something like that, right? Still horrible. So these are the things that they do to indicate who was a Jew or not. And it's still, it just speaks to that they could have easily blended in if they had to do that. They had to physically give them a tattoo, which is a permanent mark for them to do that, to them to say who it is. So if you are not, let's say you're not honest in doing that, all they're going to do is grab your arm and see if you're telling the truth, and see if you're telling the truth, right? And if they see it like, you're lying, and, you know, God knows what happens, right? That's where they end up doing, right? To see if you were Jewish or not. So again, according to the Holocaust Encyclopedia and Jewish accounts, and most of all, common sense, and just knowing the basic history of it, the Jewish people are genetically of European descent. They are just simple converts to Judaism. And they were ostracized sometimes for that. Yes, they were. But that doesn't change the fact that you're European. If I become, let's say, I'm a Buddhist, or I do Confucianism or Taoism and stuff like that, those Asian religious philosophies, that does not change my DNA, which is mostly West African, to Asian. That's not how it works. That's not how it works. You know, that's not how it works. So we really have to be honest with ourselves. I think what we missed out there was a teachable moment for us for the whole world to just pretty much learn about, okay, What's the faith about? What the Holocaust was about? Why did he say these things? Why did he consider them that? And all the atrocities. It was a learning moment. But what it was basically damage control on the truth and controlling what free thought or to question anything. This could have been a teachable moment for people who thought they knew something or people who didn't know anything at all. But instead, what we're going to do, someone says something that obviously makes sense historically, culturally, genetically. Ban them. Like, this, and that's what pissed me off. The intellectual dishonesty in them putting her out to dry. Now, yeah, some people would say because, Whoopi Goldberg is black, but nah, anyone who would have said, there's people that said worse than that, but even anyone who would have said what she said, they would have got the axe too. So that's basically it. I just really wanted to, it was really bothering me, like the total dishonesty people were, it just got me upset. And like people were deliberately coddling people who were offended, which is pretty much fake outrage because what Whoopi was saying was not untrue. They were basically protecting them. She was basically saying the truth, and them as a protective class, like them being protected in their delusion or their belief was the problem. Not her saying what she said was the problem, right? Because, as I said, this is the epitome of white privilege. They're a different race. So they're a different race. What, are they Asian? Like, what's their racial classification? You got black, you got white, you got Asian, and you got different forms of brown people. What is a Jewish race? Where do they fit in that so-called color spectrum? Because they're white. I don't get it. Like, I would like to really talk to someone who really actually believes this or could sell me this and really tell me what type of race you are genetically. Anyway, I was going to end it right here. Please, thank you for listening to me. My rant, if you got this far, remember to like, share, subscribe, and I appreciate you all. Thank you.
Term, the very fact that it does appear attributed to Dr. Ben in the text, we find to be absolutely, again, insulting and unacceptable.
All right, Dr. Ben, what is your response?
By the way, I have to let the rabbi know I'm much as a Jew as he is. Born of a Jewish mother, a Yemenite grandmother, a Yemenite Puerto Rican mother, Ethiopian Hebrew father, Beta Israel, by the way, they call us Falasha for whatever their reasons. Thus, I am as much a Jew as the rabbi or the grand rabbi in Israel, any of the grand rabbis in Israel. Is the rabbis stating here that in the book of Genesis, there is no mention of the extermination, and I use the word genocide, of the 7 tribes of the Amalekites, the Hittites, the Moabites, the Jebusites. He in his own statement stated that this is ameliorated somewhat in the book of Samuel. Everybody saw that. But the book of Samuel doesn't change the book of Genesis. And we remember that Genesis wasn't written first. It was Exodus. It's at the Council of Jamia that they decided to write Genesis. Next, since there is no Jewish race, you have Indian Jews from India, from Kashim Jews, look like any Indian. You have ourselves from Ethiopia. By the way, the rabbi wouldn't forget that it says Moses married the daughter of the high priest of Ethiopia, or Cush. Being a rabbi, he will know this. Second, moreover, about the bar mitzvah, and I went through one like the rabbi went through one at around the same period of time. Is the rabbi saying that the bar mitzvah is not a commitment to the people? Isn't the Torah demanding? And I don't talk about the Talmud. Talmud is not Torah. The Torah is supposed to have been written by God or passed down, although it was in fact written at the Sanhedrin. The theory, the mythology, the allegories that it's written by God or passed down by Moses, again is a myth. That's Jewish mythology, because Moses is dead in around 1196 before the Christian era, whereas the Sanhedrin doesn't release a thing called the Torah until about 700 before the Christian era, which was written from 700 before the Christian era to 500. It took 200 years. There's a commitment in anybody, that any child that's been bar mitzvah, and when he's talking about circumcision of women, that is strictly Western, and it has nothing to do with orthodoxy. They're using the word orthodoxy to mean something. There have been a circumcision. It can't be a circumcision of girls. But anyhow, let us continue. The point is that in the bar mitzvah, it commits the boy. If you commit yourself to the community, there's a call to return to Israel. There's a call that every child, I went through it, that you must come back to Israel. If that is not fact, the rabbi can say what he wants. His position or the ADL position of fear of this. Then let's look at the behavior. It's just like saying today, one time the rabbi, I don't know personally, but the ADL and all the other Jewish organizations one time didn't even recognize that we exist as falashas. It is something in America. American Jews have decided that they're going to speak for all Jews. And not only for all Jews. You remember they said blacks and Jews. I'm black and Jewish. You're white and Jewish. You're European. You're of European Jewish ancestry. I'm African Jewish ancestry. No more claim to Israel than I have, because there's no Jewish race. Okay, let me continue. The rabbi he says that Abraham, he points to Judaism coming from Abraham. Then I said that the rabbi obviously have not read the 10 Commandments and their source. Moses is not until about 1346 before the Christian era, 49 years after the death of Amenhotep IV, otherwise known as Akhenaten. Every one of those 12 so-called commandments, and that Moses is supposed to have gotten at Mount Sinai. By the way, Mount Sinai is still in Egypt, in Africa, hasn't gone any place. Now, those 10 commandments weren't gotten by Moses. Because I'm Jewish don't mean that I have to follow the mythology. When you go in any of the major tombs in Egypt, you find those 10 commandments plus 32 more, otherwise referred to as the negative confession. Am I to believe that Moses was born in Mizraim, Egypt, about 1346 before the Christian era, went to school there, become a priest, at age 85 or around there, decided that somebody mistreated his people, and that in every school in Egypt, you had to recite the negative confession, 42 laws, of which they said, I have not killed man or woman, I have not stolen this, I have not, every one of the so-called 10 commandments is already stated that Moses didn't see it. I would like the rabbi to tell me, where does it show that Abraham taught any of this? I would like the rabbi to tell me, before circumcision in Egypt, where did the Jews have circumcision? They said that Abraham's circumcision is part of what made him Jewish. Then the rabbi must tell me, the worship of the golden calf, which they call the golden calf, isn't that the worship of Hathor, the goddess Hathor? We could go on down.